Do you want to live your best life? Join me, Camille St. Onge, on this journey where we'll chat with people around the globe about how to have fun while finding balance in life. We'll chat with designers, makers, culinarians, and people of the crafty sort, and we'll help you find your creative gift in life. We'll also talk with health enthusiasts like yogis, CrossFitters, and nutrition gurus. And we'll even have a frank conversation about how you can live your best life by balancing art, body, and soul. Well, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Art, Body, and Soul. Today, we're going to be talking about highly sensitive people. And if you don't know what a highly sensitive person is, let me begin with sharing some of the science behind it. So, oftentimes, highly sensitive people have been confused with having maybe like it's a condition, and it's certainly not. It's just a personality trait. It's one of the ways we're all made up differently. And the most recent research estimates that 15 to 20% of us are considered highly sensitive people. Now, there has been a lot of information in the past that was out there and estimated around 10%, but the most recent is 15 to 20%. And that number comes up in this interview with my guest, Jim Rajan, today. So, a little bit more about what a highly sensitive person is and why is it important to be talking about this. So if you are not a highly sensitive person and maybe you have kids, it would be good to understand what they present like, how they experience the world. And let's be clear, we all experience the world very differently, not only socially because of our upbringing and our culture and where we're at in the world, but just how we are built. We've all heard of the Myers-Briggs evaluation. Are you a thinker, a feeler? There's all kinds of different traits on how people present in the world. Highly sensitive people are those that probably feel things a little bit more intensely. That's sight, sound, and even people's emotion. And they can, I don't want to say be overwhelmed, but for lack of another word, just maybe a little overwhelmed, or perhaps the vibration of the world just wears them out a little quicker than others. But I think what's unique is because they can really sense other people's emotions, oftentimes it might feel to them like their emotions are almost passing through them. They pick it up and it doesn't feel so great. So research also shows that there's a ton of people in the world. I said 15 to 20%, but it's not just research, but what we know is there are highly visible folks out there who are acknowledging this as well. I'll give you a great example. Nicole Kidman, she is one of the most popular actresses on the modern day screen. And she has been quoted, and I'll give you an anecdotal summary of that. Essentially, most actors and actresses, she believes, have some level of hypersensing because of the type of work that they do. They have to portray emotions of others. And so they're highly sensitive people are able to tap into that by feeling and sensing the emotions, sights, sounds, smells, whatever around them in the world. And I am going to just go out on a limb and say probably some of the best actors or actresses might be highly sensitive people, and that's what feeds their craft and their skill. Some other folks in very different lanes are also were suspected to be highly sensitive people. Albert Einstein, yes, theory of relativity father. Also Martin Luther King Jr., civil rights leader, a very compassionate person. And then also Jane Goodall, another scientist. So those are some examples of people we believe are highly sensitive people. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It just means that that's how they perceive in the world. I would say that people who really are drawn to art also may be a high perceiving person. I know I'm a highly sensitive person, and I didn't understand, why I was feeling things a little bit different when I walked into a room. Like, gosh, I could stand next to somebody or near an area and I could just, get a vibe instantly without even interacting with somebody on whether or not they were bringing some positive energy or some negative energy. And I bet even you, if you're not a highly sensitive person, you picked up on that. And for HSPs, it's intensified. So, Jim Rajan is my guest today. He runs a school for highly sensitive people and helps give them support. Many people have gone a lifetime thinking that something was wrong, that they didn't realize that this is just a natural trait many people have. Societal norms, though, kind of like people to show up standardized in a standardized fashion, and that's what's acceptable. And that's just not the reality of the world. I hope you enjoy this episode of Art, Body, and Soul. Right. Good morning. Good morning here. Good evening to you, Jim Rajan. I'm so, so grateful for you joining me today. For guests and people, people listening to this, I'm just so honored that Jim has been generous with his time and joining me here. I've known Jim for several years now, and he has taught me so much, even though he says he's a teacher, but he doesn't teach anybody. You teach yourself. But just in his thoughtful way that he asks questions, he perceives the world and then amplifies energy. It becomes a lesson, even though he's so humble and says he does not. So I want to tell you a little bit about Jim, and he, like I said, he's a humble person, and he won't. I think he understates his capabilities. But so Jim is a former producer, and he's also been on Insight Timer for several years. And if you're not familiar with Insight Timer, he has done some really wonderful work, live sessions, a number of meditations, and he produces pretty high quality stuff. And I'm sure that comes from his years producing for television. And he's just really masterful at thinking through things like that. You can see it in his production. I think what's more important and why you're here, Jim, why I want to talk to you is that you have been helping people around the world for years now who may be highly sensitive people. And I think you are a highly sensitive person yourself. And Jim, I think the label that I've seen you give yourself is a teacher, a knower, a seer, a distance healer. You recognize highly sensitive people. And so I want to open the conversation around that. And if I've missed anything in there, I mean, please fill in the gaps along the way. But thank you so much. So, Jim, tell us. So, can you tell me a little bit about what you describe as a highly sensitive person, and how that came into your knowing, and a little bit about what you do today?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Camille. We've talked a lot about sitting down and having a cup of coffee in person one day because we live on opposite sides of the planet, and this is really nice, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Um, for me, I mean, if you look at kind of at the science, there about 10% of humans are called highly sensitive or high sensing, or and the majority of those highly sensitive people have been told that it's something bad or wrong, or that they're a problem, or it's difficult, or they're generally awkward or uncomfortable in certain situations, like social situations. When a highly sensitive person walks into a room full of 50 people, there's a kind of, they feel so much. High sensing people feel everything. And it makes it really tough I didn't really know. There wasn't even a thing when I was a kid, like when I was a kid at school in the 1970s and 80s, dyslexia wasn't a thing. ADHD wasn't a thing. I'm obviously both of those things. Um,
Same,
but
same. I can join you
I,
in that fire.
well, I'm obviously I'm very, very sensitive, and it's so sensitive that it even put me in hospital when I was a very, very young child. And I feel things and I see things and I notice things other people don't notice, and I perceive things in a very specific way. And I know that there are lots and lots of people in this world who are the same. And it feels to me that of those 10% of humans who are sensitive or highly sensitive, most of those spend a lot of time numbing themselves because it's so difficult or painful, or they don't really know what to do with themselves, or it's uncomfortable, or they get shunned or just told to stop being so sensitive and get on with life. We continuously taught that we should comply and be like everyone else, that we numb ourselves or self-soothe all the time to just try and get through life and try and compete and be in this huge life competition thing that human beings have made for themselves. And I came to a conclusion in my kind of maybe mid-30s that I'd quite like to just do it my way. And through that, having worked in all kinds of different places, like working as a producer and working in TV and film and all sorts of things, I had learned certain skills, although I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I liked the idea of spending time exploring and developing my kind of intuition and my ability to perceive things. And that turned into what I do now, what I've been doing for many years. And I don't really know how to describe it. And you've said, because I kind of call myself a teacher and I have a school, but I don't really teach. We talked about this, and I call myself a healer, but I don't really heal. And I call myself a seer, but I don't see anything anyone else can't see. I just kind of help people see things that they're not really looking at themselves because they're so busy. Life in their face, millions of things, sensationalism, Instagram, social media, wherever. We're all so bombarded with everything all the time that we don't give ourselves the time to stop and use our own kind of intuitive abilities or sensitive abilities, or our sensibilities is probably a good word. And so I decided I'm going to do this myself and work it out. And I spent lots of years looking for a teacher to teach me what I do now, and I never found one. And I swear I spent years, and each teacher I found, and I gave them the whole of myself, and they didn't know what the hell to do with it, and they ended up teaching me the opposite of what they thought they were teaching me every single time. And I'm not, I'm not being negative about people at all. I was looking for something very specific, and there just wasn't somebody out there. There were people who gave me, little pieces of the pie, but no one gave me everything I wanted. So I kind of, I definitely gave up for a while, but then something inside me pushed me forward, um, and I listened to that and created my own way of understanding the world and seeing and helping people. And fortunately, it worked. And I'm super lucky that I get to live the life that I live and work in the way that I do.
Well, so you put a lot in there. I'm going to back us up a little bit. So you talked about, so here's something that you might not know that we have in commonality. So, and I think it's important to talk through this because people might not, they might be asking the question of what's wrong with me, or instead of what happened to me. Right.
Mm.
And here's how I am. So you've mentioned that you were as a child, very highly sensitive, and it put you in the hospital. So when I was a child, and I'm a highly sensitive person, and you know that, right? You already know that. So I'm a highly sensitive person. And when I was a child, I got really, really sick, like no explanation for months. I was bedridden for like 3 months. And the doctor's explanation was, it's her nerves. And I was like, I think I was 8. It was at 8. I was like at 8 years old. And I was sick for an entire summer. And then the first day of school was coming, and suddenly I just miraculously got better. No explanation, right? It's her nerves, right? So today we would probably treat that differently, right, than at that time. But what it revealed to me as I talked to you and I'm listening, you're like, I was hospitalized because, so let's talk about that a little bit, because somebody might have a child that's highly sensitive or they are highly sensitive. And what are the signs that you see, that think that people might see in a child or in their own childhood, that is that highly sensing type of behavior, or might even be like signals, like this might be a sign, right? That you're highly sensitive. So can you tell me what
Yeah.
your experience was?
So I was about a year old, and my mother was going through all kinds of problems in her own life, some quite tragic, and I wouldn't eat. And they took me to the kind of, there's a famous children's hospital in London called Great Ormond Street, and I was there for quite a long time, and they couldn't work out what the problem was, and they said the only thing we can find is transmitted anxiety. So my mother was like, "Oh, right, I'm transmitting anxiety to my child, and it's making him ill." Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, well, what am I supposed to do with that? And she did her best, and I love my mum. She's an amazing woman. She's stood up for me and fought for me all the way through my life. And I've had amazing conversations with her since, and I still do. For me, I was my dad said that the day I was born, I came out from my mother, and I was wide eyed and super awake. And I kind of take that as being already hyper vigilant and already taking in everything and trying to process it. And I think I do a pretty good job of being hyper vigilant. And I don't I used to, it used to overstress me, and I used to get really tired or ill. I think that I am just very susceptible to other people's emotions and feelings and energy. I don't really like the word energy because I find it's a bit new agey and
Mhm.
doesn't really. But anyway, I'm very. I have sensibilities to feeling other people and situations, and you can put me in a room and I can kind of tell you what the person over there's relationship is like with their father without even knowing them.
Yes.
And do you know what I mean? And it's
Yes,
kind
I
of, and
do
it
know what
doesn't,
you mean. Yes.
people look at this, and I'll say that, and the majority of people will be like, well, you're just making that up. Uh,
No.
and, and it's not the case. I wouldn't, I'm not someone special. I'm a human being like you, like all people. Everyone is a product of their environment plus their own, how they come into the world. And I came into the world super, super intense and awake and able to just inhale everything. And obviously I did that with my mother, and I inhaled all of her pain in that moment. Because, when you're a 1-year old, you're not separate from your mother.
Mhm.
You essentially are your mother still. Yeah. And it made me incredibly ill, to the point where I wouldn't eat. So signs, um, for me, as a father, I would just say, how much time as a parent do you just sit being aware of your child? Nowadays, we're all like, here, have a telephone, leave me alone, I'm exhausted. Or, everyone's got an iPad, or everyone's got TV, or we're all self-soothing because modern life is exhausting. And being a parent, you've got to pay mortgages and put food on the table and all of that stuff, and try to be the best parent you can be. I mean, a good, the whole point of parenting for me is to do the least amount of damage possible to your child, because everyone's going to do some. I'm sure I've done some to my daughter. She'll tell me when she's 25 or something. Um, I would say, I don't know if there are specific signs, but all human beings are incredibly intuitive and sensitive to other people when they bother to do that, when they're actually calm and centered and just listening. How often do we just sit and listen to our child instead of trying to fix them or telling them what to do or being exhausted and they haven't done their homework and they won't go to bed, and for God's sake, just do what you're told, please, instead of, hold on a minute, what's going on? Where's this behavior coming from? How often do I sit there with my child and say, are you all right?
Yeah.
Is there anything you need? What can I do anything for you? No, we're just running around trying to survive, telling them what to do. Come on, do your homework, for heaven's sake, go to school, whatever. And we don't listen, and then we expect a doctor or someone else or a therapist to deal with a problem that actually probably isn't a problem. It's a signal. I'm sure I was quite difficult to my parents when I was a kid. And I was expected, my dad is Indian and my mum is English. And so I was, with an Indian dad, I was expected to be a doctor or a lawyer or a professional or whatever. And, by the time I was 18, I was tattoos and dreadlocks and just a complete disaster to the Indian half of my family. I was allowed to experiment, though. I was allowed to experiment with life. That's what life is.
So, you said something about, I think you said it was transmitted anxiety. I was just listening to an interview on Oprah Winfrey's podcast, and she was interviewing a psychologist. She wasn't interviewing; they were having a conversation. They've co-written a book together, and it's one of the points they were talking about is that trauma can happen early in life, and kids are resilient and they get through it. But really, the most important time is when a child is in that infant to like 1-2 years old, because they perceive so much, and that they, even though I don't have, for lack of another word, I know you don't like the word energy so much, but they pick up on the energy that somebody is giving off. And that right there can start to really affect how they form, how they start to grow, the patterns in their brains. And if you're highly sensitive, and like you said, 10% of the population is, then that's probably amplified, right? That's definitely amplified. It's a real thing in children and adults that 10% we're perceiving it. And you said, people go, no, how would you know when you walk in a room? I'm the same way. I can go in a room and I can tell you about people. I immediately read their energy. You could call it an aura. That sounds a little bit woo-woo-y. And I know that turns people off, but there aren't words necessarily other than that for me to assign to what I'm picking up. But it's a real thing, and people who are highly sensitive can totally read what's on the other person, right? Even if they aren't interacting with them directly. And for me, did that one time. My cousin and I were at an event, and we bumped into a friend of hers, and we were in a big venue. It was hundreds of people, and she came up, and I was able to tell her, I said, "Oh my goodness, your friend. I think she has X, Y. I think this is what I was picking up on her." She says, that is scary. That is scary that you knew. How did you know this? And you haven't even met her before. But sometimes you can just get a sense of someone, how they move, how they intonate, and just kind of the vibrations of them. So it's a real thing. And you experienced it your whole life, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think one time we had a conversation, and it was about, you had been in a number of different industries. And I think when you're in toxic environments as a highly sensitive person, it affects you. differently. Can we talk? I'd like to talk about that a little bit because there's a lot of toxicity out there. And then there's a lot of distraction, right? What are your thoughts on a highly sensitive person being in toxic environments? And I guess that's right. That's all relative to what toxic is, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've got to be careful with toxic, haven't we? But I didn't really have the tools. I grew up in and went to English schools, which were very strict, and you have to do things like this, and it's like this, and there was no scope to be. If only my school had existed when I was a kid. Yeah, so I was forced to be in a specific way, and this is what life is, and this is how you succeed in life, and you've got to do this and this and this. You have to go to school, then you have to go to university, then you have to get a job, and you have to be successful. And the mark of a person is success and winning, and how much stuff you have, and then you're done, and that's wonderful. And so I went down that road, I just got bitten like 1,000 times again and again. And I was, yeah, I mean, working in kind of TV was there were wonderful people there. There were amazing, amazing people there. And there were also really dark, conniving, vicious, backstabbing
Oh,
people.
yeah.
And I had people, take, and what's the word? I would do a piece of work and that person would say, "Oh no, that was me." People take credit for my work, all kinds of things. And I just kind of let it slide because I was young and wide-eyed and wow, isn't the world this amazing thing? And the world just kept kind of biting me, but it wasn't the world, it was humans.
Mm.
The biggest problem a human being will ever have is other human beings, let's be honest. Um, so I found it really challenging, and I got fired or left or made redundant from pretty every job I had, and I had loads of different things, from all kinds of different jobs, working in film and TV to working in bars, managing a cocktail bar, organic food shops, all kinds of things, and nothing worked, and I just kept getting more and more downtrodden by what humanity had created as a society, and I just didn't like any of it at all. And I was really reclusive, did a lot of self-soothing in
Mm.
all kinds of ways, were very negative for me when I was young. But I think all human beings, we come into life and we research, and the first 30 or so years is just us researching what life is and what being a human is, and then you kind of get it. And then, around mid-30s, you're like, all right, okay, what am I going to, what shall I do here? I'm going to do something. What shall I do with this? Let's, or let's win. I'm here to win. I'm going to win, and
Yeah.
I just kept not winning. I kept not winning so much, but something inside of me didn't decide that I was a loser because I wasn't winning. Something inside of me, maybe it was good parenting, I have no idea, was kind of like, all right, well, then that's not the right thing for you. Go try something else. And I tried everything until I ran out of things to try. And I had been very interested in kind of healing arts. My mother it was and is a homeopath. My sister is a homeopath. I loved Chinese medicine. I was super interested in Reiki. My mum and my sister, they're both Reiki masters. I was just fascinated by healing. I did a wonderful apprenticeship with these two amazing women who were a couple in shamanic practices and shamanic arts. And I kept doing all those things and loving all of it, but it wasn't teaching me the thing I wanted to learn. It helped, and I used some of those things, but yeah, the point came where I just sat down one day and I was like, right, I'm done. I'm going to just work this out myself because no one's got a clue. In fact, no one's got a clue what they're doing in life. Everyone is making everything up. Everything in life is made up, isn't it? Let's be honest. Everything is somebody else built on it. All of a sudden, it becomes an institution, and then we're all like, no, that's a real thing. No, it isn't. It was just someone just made it up one day. I know I'm not being sycophantic, but or cynical, but that's what human life is, isn't it?
Well, yeah,
So I
it is like that. I mean, think about it. Okay, we're operating in some instances on processes and thoughts that are hundreds and hundreds of years old, and it's not even relevant today, right?
yeah, doesn't it, doesn't it make sense why we're doing that at all?
You know,
So yeah, so I just kind of decided, yeah, I went on feeling. I went on feeling and intuitive nature and allowed myself to be guided to something that I didn't even know what it was, and I didn't even know what I would do with it. But I remember asking a friend, "Listen, I don't know what I'm going to do, but can I just do a thing for you?" And she was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." And I did my first healing ceremony with her and sent her the information, and she absolutely freaked out and said, "No one knows that about me. How where did you get? How do you know all these things?" And I was kind of like, well, I don't know. I just sort of sat and listened, and you gave me that. And then I honed in and did the work and played with it and developed and started to understand what I was doing. And I don't ever teach that to other people, but I help other people do the same thing themselves. Yeah.
so I want to acknowledge something and not brush over it. But so you grew up in England, right?
Mm.
And so that's a very uh that's a very interesting culture. I want to it depending upon what fissure you're in, it can to me feel very pinched.
Yeah.
And so thank heavens that you had a homeopathic mom. So
Mm.
yeah, right. That was a blessing right there. And then having an Indian father who just this I don't know. Obviously, I don't know your dad, but maybe he had some cultural Ayurvedic type of natural cultural beliefs that might have helped it just in life. So I think that's a blessing in itself. I just wanted to acknowledge that when you say, "Yeah, I grew up in England and I highly sensitive and I had all of these expectations," and that's a really constrained environment. Okay, and
Mm.
so so this is going somewhere, Jim. We'll get to this healing thing, but I don't want to skip over these things that I think are so important. And that's a highly sensitive person. Or, people have a difficult time just doing things because this is the way we were told it. This is the way it should be. It's like
Mm.
that Pink Floyd song, "Another Brick in the Wall."
Mm.
How can you have
Yeah.
an egg pudding if you don't eat your meat?
Mm.
You just if you you just have to walk the line. This is what you should do. And so many school systems are they're set up in standardization. And they were
Mm.
built on the foundation of creating workers for factories. It's
Mm.
memorization,
Mm.
it's uh, hierarchical, follow
Mm.
the rules, memorize, standard learning, bam, you can go and people don't even realize that. And so if you're somebody, one, who's highly sensitive, two, you're smart and you're like, wait a minute, none of this makes sense. This is 100-year-old system, that is that we don't, it doesn't have to be that way. And that,
Mm.
like you said, everything is just kind of made up anyways. No matter what people come along and say, "Oh no, I know everything. This is where I should be doing. This is what I do at this stage, and this is what I do at this stage." Okay, they've plugged into the matrix. Sorry, that's not to downgrade anybody. That's what they've lived in, and it's okay. And there's just some people who kind of you're like, "What? This makes no sense to me because I'm sensing and seeing and everything." So I think I just want to acknowledge that because we don't oftentimes stop to think about those around us and how we all, move through the world, and highly sensitive people definitely are the ones I think who challenge the status quo. That rolling into, so here, this highly sensitive person, right? And now you have a school for highly sensitive people. And you also do, I think you have this, is for lack of a better word, healing sessions, right? Knowing that, and so you kind of introduced to that, you like all of a sudden you were able to tell somebody about their story.
Right.
And then you can, now you do that today. And you also have this school for highly sensitive people. And how do those two work together? And are they integrated? Are those separate in the way you move forward? And I feel like we haven't. I feel like we need to unpack both of those. But I want to be respectful of your time too, right? But
No, I've got loads of time. I've got loads of time. It's fine. So let me just jump back a little bit. The being growing up in England, as a brown kid that wasn't English, so the English people rejected him, and wasn't Indian, so that all the Indians kind of rejected him as well. What I learned to do was belong to myself. I kind of had to create my own religion because I didn't get to fit in with this one or that one, so I had to be the weirdo, and have always been like that, and became very aware early on at how violent human society is and how violent school can be. I remember seeing teachers hit. It was an all-boys school. Teachers would be hitting boys for bad behavior. It was the 1970s, 1980s. I remember seeing a teacher pull a boy's hair out once, like awful things. Yeah, really nasty. And understanding that, therefore, life is violent. Normal life is full of violence. Right. Okay, I get it. So I kind of need to be violent to be able to survive in this. And that never really worked with me.
understandably, right? Violence is not working for me. I'm with you. I'm with you on that, Jim.
And then look at what's going on in the modern world. There's these extreme acts of violence, and it's all about power and status and winning and being the best and ego, and none of that actually helps humanity move forward. In fact, it keeps us in the dark ages. Yeah, maybe we've got iPhones and computers and all this magical technology, but there's no difference between human beings now and 1,000 years ago. We're all just killing each other and trying to be the best at something, or being the king of something, or the queen of something. So as I started to develop, my own sensibilities as a human being, and put it out there, the fact that, I kind of do this thing and I'm a bit not sure of what it is, but if anyone would like me to do it, let me know. Very quickly that became a thing, and I went from charging nothing for it to, charging people something for it, and all of a sudden making a living at it. And then people were asking me if I could teach them to do it as well. And I have a very, very strict moral code, and I understood that education tried to put me in a box and make me what I wasn't, so that education says you are nothing. We will make you into something, and then you're useful. Like you said, we'll make you into a factory worker, then you're useful. And my understanding is the opposite. My understanding is, no, you came into this world in the most beautiful way. Let's make you be that, and get rid of everything else that they've kind of piled on top of you. All these carpets that have been piled on, and heavy blankets that have been piled on top of you. Let's get rid of all of those and see what is actually here, see what you actually are, and have fun with that. And somebody said to me, well, why don't you make a school? And I thought, oh, right, okay, I'll make a school. So
Who does that? I'll just take a school.
Maybe a month, and I worked out a syllabus, and all right, we'll learn this, and this, and I was like, no, but that's not. If I'm going to have a school, no, I'm going to do it properly. So instead, I got rid of all of my ideas, and I put a huge piece of paper on a wall, and took a year to, any time something felt right and nice, whatever that was, it came out of me, and I wrote it on this huge piece of paper, and that's what the school is. The school told me what it wanted to be, instead of me saying, we've got to learn this, and it's got to be cost effective. And if we're going to charge people, then, they're going to want to learn this and this. And what we do is we don't teach, we just take, this year, last year we had 12 people. This year we've got 16 people. We just take 16 people and we go on a journey together where we build a constellation, a community within that people where they really trust each other to be able to let go of all of these things and then experiment, and have a group of people with them going, wow, yeah, come on, let's do this. Instead of, no, I've got the answers, you can't have them. No, I'm going to win on the exam, and I'm going to do better than you. It's not, there's no kind of winning or being better. There's humans coming together and saying, all right, let's do something together where we all find something new about ourselves.
Do you think, so let me ask this question. So you've, had met with hundreds of people, and when do you think people realize they're a highly sensitive person?
For me, they always knew, but they tried to comply with standard systems. And each time they kept getting burnt. Or, how many highly sensitive people have said to me that they've met someone and straight away their intuition was just like, don't go there. But they married that person, or
Yeah.
or whatever. Now,
Yeah.
it's we all know what, and I'm not saying highly sensitive people are better or different or special or anything, but you do know when you have high sensing within you. The problem is you've also got a mind, and the mind comes in, and the mind has been trained very early on to stop you taking risk and making sure you don't die. So your mind is really good at saying, oh, no, you should, no, go for the safe option, or what's the most comfortable option here? Right, we'll do that one. Don't throw yourself off a cliff. Don't do the dangerous stuff. Let's keep it nice and gentle and clean, and let's use the stories we've already seen and just copy them. And so we're all copying each other. Oh, this is how life is. We'll copy a Disney movie, or what Hollywood movies go like that. Right. So that's what romanticism is. I'll do that. Oh, Harry Met Sally. Right. Cool. Well, I'll do that. Or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And instead of going, no, let's get rid of all of that. None of that is mine. None of that belongs to me. Let it go. Right. What am I? What is this? How do I feel? What would I like to do? How would I like life to be? Instead of you have to do this and you have to do that, have to, if you know anything about nonviolent communication, have to, should, ought to, must. You must brush your teeth. You should do your homework. You have to do your chores. I got that when I was a kid. I'm sure you did as well. And there's all these really subtle violent things in humanity, in modern society. Human beings, we need society. It's a super important thing. We all want to belong to something. And at the same time, that doesn't mean that you have to be engulfed by it and eaten alive by it. You can make your own path. And that's kind of what I try to share with people by doing it myself. I think the best way of teaching is to live as an example instead of telling people what to do.
Well, so that highly sensitive person component of that, understanding, I think what you're saying is that, at some point you're a highly sensitive person, and that you sense that. And then the other thing that I kind of took away from this last little bit here was that instead of following what we see in social media, social media, it could be on YouTube, it could be network television, if anybody still watches network television, whatever streaming, whatever channel that you're looking at, you see that. And many of us, it's like, oh, this is what I'll go do. But what I took from that is stop, be still, and listen to your intuition, right? Because to me, that's what you're describing is intuition is my inner, or what I call it my inner landscape, my inner knowing, your inner knowing. And people aren't slowing down on the average. I think everybody has the ability to. I think that some people, they're just wired. They're just wired a little different. It's just where they are sensing and perceiving and feeling way, way, way at a much higher frequency than the average, like you said, 10%. And eventually, if they may end up at your school, or like they may end up in a healing session with you, find their way to you, because this is like a worldwide movement right now, right? It's like, if you've ever, read Eckhart Tolle's book, It's a New Earth, there is this global awakening. People are going through some kind of ascension process. They're becoming more aware, and I think highly sensitive people are in, you're obviously in this group, but even people who aren't highly sensitive people are all part of this great awakening, which Eckhart Tolle talked about a long time ago. So what the things, and he wrote about it in his book, which is wildly popular. Apparently I'm a Oprah fan because I'm going to mention her again. So she's, spent a lot of time with Eckhart Tolle exploring the spirit, right? And what that is. And what you're describing too is, you've got your mind, right? Your mind is busy. And then your body, right? What's, physically going on. My mind is my nervous system. My body is, keeping everything moving. But there's this other piece, right? This inner landscape, this intuition. That's, your spirit is there. Your mind is just the executive function, right? It's the neurological piece of things. So, anybody listening who's like, what is all of this? This is nothing new. This is like the way of the world for a millennia, like the entire existence. But today there's awakening. More and more people, and you'll see it in the Gen Z, they're like, no, we're not drinking alcohol. We don't drink alcohol. Right? No, we're not giving gifts for Christmas. This is about spending time together. This is more important, right? And there's this awakening. I think there's like, I don't know the ages of the people who attend your school. I'm sure they range, but I would imagine that there's a lot of Gen Xers who are highly sensitive people who might be like, people are finding these year-long experiences to help themselves because they've gone through life. They're burnout. They're tired, unfulfilled. They're not an attorney out there, maybe necessarily, who's just killing it and like crushing and winning. And there's nothing wrong if that's what your jam is. But for some people, they're like, yeah, this is not filling my cup. And rather than, I want to explore more the spiritual component of things, the inner landscape, my inner knowing. Yeah.
The deeper aspects of life. I mean, in our school, we've had people who are in their 70s and people who are in their 30s and everything in between. And I believe very specifically, in fact, I know that all human beings are highly sensitive, but the majority of us gave it up to win in the competition of life instead. Or there's no difference between me and you. There's a wonderful statement in Buddhism that says there's no difference between you and the Buddha, just like there's no difference between you and Jesus Christ. He was an amazing man. Jesus was obviously a mystic. The Buddha obviously as well was an incredible individual, but you have that capacity as well. There's no difference between you and them. They were human beings.
And Jesus said that too.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
was one of his teachings. It's like, listen, you all, yeah. So thank you for underscoring that. Yeah.
So it is really difficult. And when you've grown up with kind of blame or shame or humiliation, a lot of men in the modern world are so angry. Why? Because anger usually comes from sadness. Where's that sadness come from? From being humiliated in some way or other as a young man or as a boy, being told off or shouted at or made to look stupid in front of other people. Bang, little bit of humiliation done. That just feeds its way into anger later on in life in some way or other. I mean, I have great faith in all human beings. I don't believe that there's such a thing as a bad person. There are definitely people who are a victim of their own conditioning and believe it so wholeheartedly, um, and use that part of, and that they use the very analytical, organizational half of the brain. But we know, talk to a Harvard anatomist, and they'll tell you, yeah, one half of the brain is super analytical and great at organizing, but the other half of the brain completely understands that everything is connected and everything is the same, and the human being isn't just this body, but it's vast. And that's normal modern knowledge now, and yet we still think, right. How do I be spiritual, or what is spirituality? What does it mean to be spiritual? I like my mum. My mum would say, "Wow, she's got spirit. She's got life force. She's got real internal power. That person's got some force. That's spirit. That's for me. That's what spiritual is. Being able to um, really live this experience as fully as you allow yourself to. A lot of modern spirituality is kind of in the air and a bit wishy-washy, and I really try and steer clear of that, um, mainly because it makes people go a little bit insane, and a lot of it doesn't really make sense. I'm very, very analytical. I've got a very engineering brain,
Oh
and
my gosh,
it's
what a pairing.
yeah.
Wow, that's a dichotomy, right?
Yeah. I mean, I did engineering design at university that I never really used, but I loved it. So yeah, we can dissect at humanity and go, these are the bad people, and these are the good people, and these are the sensitive, and these are the, and actually we're all that. And I've got good and bad in me. There are dark places in me, just like there are dark places in
Yeah.
you. I'm full of anger sometimes when, if you hit that, if you trigger that, it will come out. Same with you. Um, what I find though is when you allow someone, no, let's use the correct wording. When you help someone give themselves permission to explore further than what they think they know, wonderful things happen.
So, put a pin in that. You always have such wonderful comments and conversation. You talked about anger in men, and that's as an example. That's so. I just don't want to brush over this, and that's men in particular have only been allowed to show one by society, one emotion that's acceptable. And that one emotion, and I'm sure you know what it is, anger, right? That's the only one that you get to show, right? That's the acceptable one. Like you said, there's all of this culture that doesn't allow for that. And regardless of thousands of years of having privilege, and if you were uh, a European white male, heterosexual, the thousands of years of being in a privileged place, just setting that aside, just people are people. And right now, men in particular, young men are suffering. If
Yeah.
you're like 19 years old right now, you're inheriting, you are inheriting the thousands of years of judgment that men have been held accountable for over the last several years now, right? And it's a hard place for them to be, because it's anger is the only emotion that is really mainly deemed acceptable. So I didn't want to brush over that, because I heard you say that, and it just hearkened me to knowing that it's, as people, and men in particular, that it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to be highly sensitive. And I'm so glad that you have this school where, there's many programs around the world right now where people are coming together around certain things, right? And maybe some of it might be called spiritual, or people are doing a mixture of business, mindset. It's, that whole resilience of being a human and having this experience that we call life. And so for anyone listening, I'm underscoring this because this is happening around the world. I'm really interested in your school because of your passion that you have, right? And you said, "Oh, I started to write all the business plan down." And then I said, "Scrap it. We need to talk about what people need first."
Exactly.
And
And you've got to listen. Yeah, I mean, for example, all the young men nowadays, I don't know which gen we're in Gen Z or something like that, I'm not sure. So now there's all of this gender fluidity and all these things that I'm not going to pretend that I understand, but I like it. And yet, yeah, there's all these young men who are coming from this place where their fathers and grandfathers were only allowed to show anger and what the hell do you as a young man do with that? I think I'm really lucky because I saw my dad cry a lot.
mm,
I mean, I like I wouldn't say I'm a crier or I'm a good crier. I have
uh,
what I've done is I've built a life for myself where there are people in my life who wonderfully give me the space to explore my own emotions and my own emotional well-being. And I was with someone recently who didn't say a word, but just in this woman holding a space for me, an old pain from about 20 years ago that was really deep and awful was just allowed to be expressed. And it felt so wonderful. For me, that's why women are the true leaders of humanity because there's such depth. I try as a man in our school to take people on a journey into depth and into the old spiritual teachings, because all the modern spiritual teachings are just a kind of bastardization of a lot of the old things, just written in a new way.
yeah. Thanks for saying
And I
that.
don't give anyone's book in anywhere at all. But I love going deep. I love to just explore the depth of what it means to be a human being and where that can go. But I don't have the answer. And I'm not the one at the front bearing the torch going, come on, I know where we're going. I'm kind of at the back, with the people who haven't got a clue going, look, I don't know where we're going either, but where do you want to go? And they'll go, well, I have no idea. What about over there? And they go, yeah. All right, let's go there and see what happens. And all of us go there and it's just, and people have these in tremendously rich experiences that they can't really explain and you can't write down, and you couldn't go to the pub afterwards and tell your mates about it because they won't get it. But you can go there, and people who crave things like that seek out people like me. So I have a responsibility. If I'm going to go on that journey with you, then I'm going to do it well. Everything I do it as I do it well, or I'm not doing it. And if it kills me, but then it kills me. But I'm doing it anyway. And I don't know where I got that from. Maybe it was practicing Buddhism for a long time. I'm not sure, but I've understood commitment to something. I don't know how or where that came from. But it helps other people draw out that thing within themselves as well. Or, oh my God, I'm scared. But all right, if you're up for it, I'm up for it. And then we explore things, and yeah, and it is all inside of you, and it is that internal landscape that we're exploring. But it's vast and it's infinite, and there's so much gold in there. Really, really, so much.
Yeah. Well, I think so. So let me address a couple things that you said, and that is, you don't know where you're going, but the group will lead you there. I
Mm.
call that coming together with people in creating a community. right? And it's so needed today, a way to connect with people. And I know that it's not possible to be in person all the time. Like
Mm.
you and I, you're in Spain, I'm in the Pacific Northwest in the United States, right? And but we can have a conversation. And I imagine, of course, with your school, you're doing a lot of virtual connections, but there's also those personal connections too. Like there's the in person, and both of them can come together, and you can create community. And I think that's, to me, I know, not I think, I believe that's so needed today,
Mm.
especially with folks being burrowed into their homes with a work
Mm.
from home environment that we started. And that, or even if you are in the office, there might not be, in like going somewhere to work, there might not be that place to come into community with someone. And
Mm.
that's what I hear that that your school is creating, is community within that group of people who are enrolled for um, that
Yeah.
year's curriculum, for lack of a better term. And you said, so here's a fun fact. Fun fact. Um, I have an creative facilitation practice called the constellation of connections. And you talked about it. You have a constellation of people. It is a
Mm.
constellation, and
Yeah.
we're all emitting light, and we're all connected in some way, how that constellation works together. And
Yeah.
that's the community piece. I think it's really beautiful when you can bring people together to work like that. We don't have that
Yeah.
unless you go into maybe like a secular church or something. There's not a lot of community-based things that I'm seeing where you can be in real community with people, but I know people are craving it, and they tell me
Mm.
this frequently wherever I go. It comes up in a conversation, like, in over the last year all the time, and we know statistics tell us that too, right? Research is telling us that people really need this. And that's what you're
Yeah.
describing to me. Is it's not just a school, it's a community, it's a place to come together.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about a constellation is that there is nobody who is the winner or the best or the leader. Each person is part of a system, and they bring themselves to that system. You know, my favorite spiritual teacher was the most anti-spiritual teacher of all, Jiddu Krishnamurti, and he was like anti-guru, and you don't need a teacher, and you don't need to follow anyone, and I love that. And I bring that into the school, and I'm like, no, I bring tools, and I have to be called the teacher, so someone kind of leads what's going on, or oversees it. But yeah, you bring it. It takes, it's exhausting to work in the way that we work. I think it's easy if you've got a school, you've got an idea, what you're going to do. Okay, we've got 3 hours. You learn this thing, off you go, learn it, come back, ask me questions if you want, and done. That's the easy way of education. Our way is, right, let's give it our all. Let's jump in, everyone. Let's get everyone to a place where they're willing to jump in. Let's jump in with them, and let's explore and see what comes. And of course, there is structure, and we bring all sorts of really interesting tools to the table as well. But it's not. I don't want somebody to feel taught or feel like they're being led, because then I'm taking something away from them. I have people who, clients or people who find me, and they send me messages every day, asking this, what do you think about that? Or what shall I do about this? And I'm very careful to never give advice, because any advice you ever give is never for the person, it's for yourself.
Ah,
So there's no point in me giving you advice, because the advice I'm giving you isn't for you anyway. It's just how I saw life. Wouldn't it be better if I shut up for 5 minutes and listen to you in a way where you're hearing yourself speak? So I love to be able to reflect back to people what they think, instead of going, well, yeah, that's a really good idea, Camille, but you should do this because I did this and this was the best thing to do. The old Instagram, here are the 3 best ways to succeed, or this is the best thing to do to be a successful entrepreneur in 2026. Like, no, it isn't. Maybe it worked for you, But this person over here is completely different, with a completely different set of systems and parameters and stories. Who the hell do I think I am to come in and say, no, do that? I did that and it worked. Yeah, yeah, just follow me. No, that's not humanity. That's hierarchy. So I like the idea of, yeah, we do 1 weekend each month over the course of 9 months in our school, and and at no point does everyone have to sit there and take notes. In fact, I watch everyone. I make sure I can see everyone on the Zoom screen, because then I go, okay, she's taking notes. All right, well, I don't want her to be taking notes. I want her to be in this. I want her to be feeling herself in this moment. I want this person to be in an experiential phase of learning, instead of I've got to write this down so that I understand it, and then I'll come back later and I'll read it again and then I'll get it. It's like, no, that's not the learning that I want. Anyone can do that kind of learning. That's boring to me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the inner learning and getting to know yourself, or exploring that,
Yeah.
or talking with people. It sounds it's a really beautiful thing when you can bring a group of people together and just facilitate a conversation. You can facilitate a community, and then they can come together and create something. That's co-creation. I know a lot of these buzzwords, you're like, oh, I'm tired of hearing this. But, I hear people say that. But I mean, really, co-creation is a wonderful thing. It's people sharing ideas, learning together,
Yes.
building something together, whatever it is, creating something together. And it's different than if I just roll out a list of, this is what we should do. Now you're all going to follow it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's easy to be the one hiding at the back, who's not, who's a bit scared of putting their hand up and asking a question, because they think, oh my God, I can't ask that. Everyone will think I'm an idiot. And it's also easy to be the person at the front asking all the questions and talking all the time. Again, if you sit and listen to somebody who can't stop talking, if you actually really listen to that person to the point where they run out of things to say, then that's an interesting place. And the same with that person who never gets the space to say anything, so they don't think what they've got to say is valid or valuable or important. When you give that person the space to say something amazing always comes out. And then you just go, wow, look at the gift that you just gave both of us.
Mm.
Thank you. How amazing, genuinely, thank you. Human beings are really obvious and simple and really quite basic. And yet we hide behind all these complexities and these games and rules and stories and systems that make it really hard for us to just feel freedom.
Freedom. Feel freedom. That's a good thing. I think that's a nice topper right there. So feel freedom. Yes. Yes. Well, thank you.
That's for me. That's what it's all about. You come into the world and it's really difficult and strange and weird, and being a human is just the weirdest thing. And then you kind of work it out. And in our school, a lot of the work is letting go and unlearning things, so that what's actually here can express itself. And that's what freedom is: the freedom to express oneself and be oneself and acknowledge one's own ideas and do something about it. Because it's easy to have these feelings, but the work is to then engage and take action, isn't it?
I can't think of a more beautiful spot to stop than on this right there. That's just really wonderful, Jim. You're just such a blessing. I'm so glad that you and I met and we've come to know each other, and that all this conversation has been so good today. Really, really good. And I'll put in the show notes, I'll be sure to include your school and how to contact you. You bring so much to the world. And my apologies, I was remiss in also mentioning that you're a musician. And a really talented musician. You can see in your background, you've got a bunch of, you have several instruments there. I
Yeah.
know. And you're an incredible musician. I've listened to several of your pieces that are very wonderful. And
Well, I actually just took all my music off Spotify because of the thing with the CEO of Spotify investing in arms and not paying the musicians who put all their music on his site. So I just took everything. So now none of my music is actually on the internet anymore. But I'm working on that. But sorry, yeah, I interrupted you.
no, that's a whole, I think it's important to mention that because I hadn't noticed that it had gone because I had listened to it previously. And I think I listened to some stuff on YouTube too, but I did think your YouTube's pretty cleared out of it as well. But yeah, it's really lovely. There is still a piece on Insight Timer though.
Yeah. Yeah, everything is still on Insight Timer. That's true. Yeah, you can find things on Insight.
Yeah, you have some music there. Okay. Yeah, it's magical. It's a journey. The music you create is a journey. So I'm sorry I didn't mention that at the top. But it's part of who you are. It's really obvious if you just look in your space that you keep, the tempura and other instruments that you have. I mean, I think you play the flute. Is that right? Or yes?
Yeah, the Banzuri flute.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. It's masterful. Thank you. Thank you for all the gifts you give to the world, for all of the lives that you touch.
I'm just super lucky that I get to kind of be alive and play with these things and have fun. I like to use life, because I'm already 51 and who knows how long I've got left. I might as well,
You're
eat
just a
life.
baby. You're just a baby. I've got you beat. You're just a baby. Um, for folks who are listening or watching this podcast too, Jim's quoted in my guided journal, Chasing Light. And I think the first quote that I said, oh, if I'm going to take a quote, because I always believe that things happen for a reason. And I was starting my list of quotes, right? So I've got, 400 pages of content in this journal. And every few pages, there's like some kind of quote from somebody. Every day there's a quote or a thought or something, but I had particular people that I picked out for quotes. And I opened up an old journal that I keep, all the notes, the stories that I've written, and it popped open and there was a quote from you that I had written down. And I was like, well, there you go. This shall be the first one that I supplant in here. And I thank you for that. So you are light. You are light. You're part of the Chasing Light dream that I, promote, which is finding people in the world who in things and being and doing just in. Thank you for tuning in to the Art, Body, and Soul podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a review. It helps more people discover the conversations we're having here. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Art, Body, and Soul or Camille St. Onge, and over at artbodyandsoul.com, where you'll find resources, programs, and a community waiting to welcome you there. Until next time, keep choosing joy, keep choosing health, and keep coming back to your body and soul. And I make it my mission each day to lift one person up, and I hope you'll do that too. Take care and be well. And a light meaning from the heart, from the spirit. And that's, to me, you're a light in the constellation. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I do my best, and my pleasure to, thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast as well. Anytime you want me on again, just say the word.
Well,
because I love these things.
I think we have more conversation to have. I mean, because I could have gone a couple of different directions with this conversation and unpacked. And I think we should come back again and chat some more. So we can talk about that in the future because it would be really lovely to continue the conversation. So thank you. Much
wherever
for
you want.
joining me, Jim.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure. My absolute pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to the Art, Body, and Soul podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a review. It helps more people discover the conversations we're having here. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Art, Body, and Soul or Camille St. Onge, and over at artbodyandsoul.com, where you'll find resources, programs, and a community waiting to welcome you there. Until next time, keep choosing joy, keep choosing health, and keep coming back to your body and soul. And I make it my mission each day to lift one person up, and I hope you'll do that too. Take care and be well.